Thank you all for coming. On behalf of Mr. Malik and the entire Senators organization, I would like to thank you all for joining us to celebrate the life of this incredible man. It's been wonderful to listen to the kind words that have been shared this afternoon. It is our pleasure to share a few stories about Bryan's time in Ottawa. Bryan made a huge impact on this organization and on many organizations in the NHL. There are countless people, including us, who owe Bryan for believing in them and giving them the opportunity to grow in this great game. This past year's success is directly related to the players and the staff that Bryan was responsible for bringing to this hockey club. Bryan's fingerprints will be on this team for years to come. As a team and as a community, we owe him a great depth of gratitude.
Over the 13 years I worked with Bryan, I had the chance to witness every one of his meetings with players and staff, and they all started exactly the same way. He would enter the room, pull out one of these cards, and say, "I just put down a few points." Pierre and I put down a few points of some of the special qualities that made Bryan such an amazing person to work with. On one hand, he was old school tough and never backed down from a fight.
On the other hand, he was incredibly kind and a caring man.
He was a Hall of Fame storyteller.
He promoted family-first approach to life to both his players and his staff.
He was always willing to go to bat for the underdog.
He was extremely proud of being Shawville's ambassador to the world.
He was the king of sarcasm.
He protected his players like they were members of his own family.
He enjoyed communicating with referees in a very animated and expressive way.
He had an internal GPS to locate the best Irish pub or hole in the wall in every NHL city. For those who don't know, his favorite post-game meal was pizza, and his favorite pre-game meal was wings.
He was a small-town guy from Shawville who contributed so much to the greatest game in the world.
But his greatest legacy might be the countless lives he saved with his campaign promoting colonoscopies.
I had the privilege to work with Bryan in both management and as part of his coaching staff. As a coach, he was demanding and made his players accountable. He was a master communicator who talked to his players on a regular basis, set out clear expectations so everybody understood their role. He showed in both his actions and his words that he appreciated the contribution of each and every player. As a result, players felt good about themselves playing on a Bryan Murray team. As shown in the famous Buffalo video, Bryan's players knew he had their back. When he lost his cool and snapped, he proved he could verbally spar at the best of them. It was a treat to watch. As a bench coach, he had a great feel for knowing who was going on a particular night and who was not, and he worked his lines accordingly. When the team was struggling and pressure was mounting, he knew how to deflect the heat onto himself and protect his players. When he gave feedback to his players, he was brutally honest and often mixed with sarcasm. This took some getting used to by many players. We had one gifted goal scorer who was going through a terrible slump. Bryan brought him in. He said, "Randy, go get him." The player thought for sure he was getting ripped. Bryan sat him down and said, "What's going on with you?" The player said, "I don't know, Bryan. I can't score. I don't feel the puck at all." He goes, "Things okay at home?" He goes, "Yeah, Bryan, things are good." "How about your teammates?" He goes, "Bryan, I love this group. They're great." And then came out the crooked finger. And he said, "Are you drinking again?" And he said, "No, Bryan, I'm not drinking." He goes, "Well, you better start, because you're no good when you're sober." We acquired one player, and the media thought he wasn't living up to expectations. So off the cuff, one media guy just grabbed Bryan and said, "What's your assessment of this guy?" And in typical Bryan Murray fashion, he answered with wit. He said, "I knew what we were getting with this player. He was big, had big hair, and not much skill." I said, "Oh, Bryan." This was before those remarks made the paper the next day. All of a sudden, Bryan said, "You better bring him in." So we brought the player in, and of course, he was a bit insulted, but Bryan said, "I'm sorry, that wasn't supposed to be printed. I was just joking, and there's no way that's supposed to be in the paper." The player said, "Well, thanks, Bryan. I appreciate that. I needed to hear that. But you did say I had no skill." He said, No. I said you didn't have much skill, and you do have big hair." Bryan's ability to know what made each player tick is why so many players have said, when reflecting on their time with him, he was the best coach they ever played for.
Over the years, Bryan and I had many, many lunches together, just talking. He always had such a great perspective. I remember him telling me a few times when I was mad about a loss or something had happened, Pierre, it's just a game. As a GM, Bryan was very well respected by agents and his peers, the other general managers. He knew how to work them hard in the same way that he worked his players when he coached them. His passion for officials never left him as a GM. I'm sure somewhere up there right now, he's got his foot on a board with the bench door open, sharing opinion about a wrong call from over the years. I know that Allison Vaughn, who worked with Bryan, will miss the way they started each day. Talking about family and friends, sharing a few laughs from before they got into the business of hockey that day. I know she cherished her time with him and will greatly miss him. It's a great reminder to all of us. Remember the important things in life. Bryan wrote line combinations, hundreds of them, all day long. His books were filled with them, often with a circle on that one position where he wanted to add a player or where he wanted his team to improve. As executives and staff, Bryan invested in us and allowed us the opportunity to make decisions. When we did and they didn't go well, he always used it as a learning experience. As a hockey man, there will never be a better judge of talent than Bryan Murray. He was always willing to put in his scouting hat to travel and see prospects. He built teams that reflected his passion for the game, players who competed hard and respected the game of hockey. For those of us who spent so much time with him at the rink, Bryan was both a mentor and a father figure to so many of us.
Bryan, you made working for the Senators a better place to work. You made the game of hockey a better game to play. But most importantly, you made the people you touched along the way better people.
Bryan's passion for the game was contagious. It was an honor for all of us to talk to him about life and the game of hockey. We learned so much from him. His competitive spirit was contagious. You wanted to do your best for the man. But most of all, his kindness was contagious. I never met Bryan's father, but one day I asked Bryan about him. I said, "How was your father, Clarence?" He said, "Pierre, he was a man I respected a lot." He only told me one quick story, and it was somewhat of a funny one. His father came down to Washington to see Bryan coach in the NHL, but he was mad after the game when Bryan went to see him, even though they won. Bryan asked his father, "Why are you mad?" He goes, "People down here, they don't watch the game. They just get up and down from their seats, and they don't watch anything." Once I asked Bryan, "Who's the toughest person you ever met?" I was expecting one of his many gritty, tough players. Without hesitation, he turned to me and said his mom. The line that followed was, "She always kept her kids in line." To Jerry, Heidi, and Brittany, we all know how taxing the game of hockey is. We thank you all for sharing Bryan with us. We are forever grateful. Hopefully the next time we all gather like this, it is to celebrate Bryan's induction into the Hockey Hall of Fame.